This trig equation looks hideous. Now you probably almost wanted to use a cofunction identity. But instead of using a cofunction identity, I'm going to use the sum and difference formulas for sine. And so once I take a look at those formulas and look back at this this ugly equation, this is what you get. For the first one, you would get sine x cosine pi over 2 plus sine pi over 2 times cosine x. Next, for the other one, you would get minus and then sine x cosine pi over 2 plus, minus sine pi over 2 cosine x. Okay, didn't have room to write the equals rad 3, but everything's going to simplify nice here in a second. Cosine of pi over 2 is 0, so that means sine x times 0 just goes away. Sine of pi over 2 would give us 1, so I can write 1 here instead, and so we're just left with a cosine x for the blue part. Then we have minus, and then on the other side, let's see what happens here. We have cosine x again, which we know equals 0. I'm sorry, not cosine x. Cosine pi over 2 equals 0. And that would multiply to sine x. That would go away. And then I have a minus. That would be a 1. Sine of pi over 2 is a 1. Minus cosine x. And I see a minus here. So minus negative cosine x, which means we're going to have a positive cosine x equals rad 3. Which means if I combine these two right here, that's 2 cosine x's equals rad 3. And when I get the cosine x alone, I get cosine x equals rad 3 over dose. Now, thinking about rad 3 over dose, where does cosine in our unit circle, where does the x in our unit circle equal pi over, or rad 3 over 2? And the answer is right there and right there. This angle is pi over 6, and this angle would be 11 pi over 6. So our two answers in this little window that they give us is going to be pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. For our general solutions, what we would have to do is we'd have to add the period to each of these. Oh, that's going to get kind of weird here. What is the period of these sine functions right here? So you have to go all the way back to the beginning. And luckily there's nothing multiplying to the x, so that means the period stays the same. Phew! So I'm going to say 2 pi times n is one of them, and the other one is 11 pi over 6 plus 2 pi n. And those are your general solutions for this gnarly looking dude.